Okay, it's 12:01. Thank you for attending. My name is Brenda Clark with Neighborhood Services. We have a presentation today on accessory dwelling units. Ryan Levake will present for about 25 minutes, and we'll toss it over to Lucas Jensen. We also have other staff on the call. We'll go ahead and get started. We have a busy presentation, so over to you, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Ryan Levake here. I'm the Deputy Director in Community Development over the Planning Division. Next slide. So what we intend to provide in the overview here is just a quick overview of what accessory dwelling units are, what Tempe's current regulations we have today in the books, some summary of our first round of outreach and research that we had conducted in the fall of last year and earlier this year. And then we wanted to highlight a proposed preliminary draft code to get and garner some feedback from the public and community on a draft code. And that's what part of the survey online is for, and those next steps in the timeline process. We'll provide other dates where there's other opportunities to meet either in person or virtual, and then wrap up the session with some time for Q&A for the residents and public input. So please be patient while we get through this presentation, and we'll answer questions at the end of the presentation. So what's an ADU? An accessory dwelling unit is basically an independent rentable dwelling unit. It's intended to be rented separate from the main residence. It may take several different shapes and forms. Sometimes it may be a detached building out the back of the property. It may be attached to the primary resident in several different ways. It could be a second-story building above a garage, could be a basement, or part of the interior conversion of a house, say like a converted garage or carport. So it takes on many different forms. It's just a separate rented independent dwelling unit from the main residence, and it's intended to be subordinate and smaller than the primary dwelling unit on site. Next slide. So we're looking at evaluating a proposed code text amendment that would look at expanding our current ADU regulations into single-family zone properties. There's many different types of zoning for single-family, from AG agricultural that are minimum 1 acre lots, all the way down to R14, which are minimum 4,000 square foot lots, and even R1 PDs that are unique size lots. All these different categories have a various range of sizes that allow basically a single-family dwelling unit on its own lot. Staff's also conducted research on ADUs and gathering information for potential code text amendment. And we're looking to address and explore where ADUs can be expanded to provide basically affordable housing options, provide extra income opportunities for homeowners, and facilitate multi-generational living. Next slide. So before we get into our research and efforts, I do also want to let you know that as the city is looking at exploring this option for ADUs, and other cities have as well, we also are faced with our state legislature in looking at a House Bill 2720 that is also looking at proposing a requirement for a statewide mandate for ADUs. Currently, this bill is in review at the Senate. What some of the elements of this bill has is that it requires municipalities of population 75,000 or more, that would be Tempe, to adopt an ADU regulations where a single-family dwelling is allowed. The regulations require that municipalities have at least one ADU allowed on all single-family properties, and it also allows an additional ADU as a restricted affordable unit. They have in the language there that requires that unit be restricted and regulated to offering no more than 80% of the area median income in terms of affordability for that unit. So yeah, at the state level right now, we are seeing that they're having options for having one or even two units on a single family property that would be a statewide initiative. The size allowance is up to 1,000 square feet or 75% of the main area of the dwelling. So if you've got a smaller home, you may only allow, maybe say it's 1,000 square foot home, you'd only allowed up to a 750 square foot accessory dwelling unit. And the state proposal has no additional parking required allowed. And in fact, they mandate that they would restrict the cities from requiring additional parking for these areas. So as a statewide imposed legislation, if this passes, by the state, then we'd be forced to follow these requirements and guidelines in adopting our city's new area for accessory dwelling units. But right now, we're hoping to put forward, a Tempe version of what we'd like to see and getting that feedback from the community on what they feel is appropriate or not appropriate at this time. Next slide. So our current Tempe ADU regulations, it's a real simple, simplified one. We adopted it in 2019. Properties that are currently zoned multifamily but have an existing single-family use on the property, one dwelling unit is allowed to have an additional ADU, accessory dwelling unit. The standards for the requirement in ADUs today is a maximum 800 square feet of livable area, only one ADU allowed per lot. No additional vehicle parking is required for this unit. And we put a restriction on the number of total bedrooms within the accessory dwelling unit to no more than 2. So going into what we've heard from the public feedback since the fall and up until the early part of this year, we gathered some additional research that had several different public meetings, Zoom meetings that were well attended. We had over 200 survey responses to our initial round of survey. We had outreach from Neighborhood Advisory Commission, and we also went to City Council. And that was the direction we received, was to basically seek an additional round of providing additional research and further public involvement with this process. We had also attended a breakfast with Burdetta that provided some further update and information about ADU process. So some of the input and common themes that we heard so far is that ADUs can be seen as a helpful improvement to our housing supply. It brings in an alternative housing opportunity that's not currently available in most neighborhoods. ADUs provide opportunities for income streams for the property owner as well. There has been identified some concerns that maybe this could be an investor-led boom in ADUs, resulting in concerns for maybe traffic congestion or disruption in the neighborhood character. So we wanted to be able to address some of those areas of concern and issues. There was questions brought up about cost of construction of an ADU. How do we minimize that? And can we help address issues like affordability with ADUs? Short-term rentals was also another issue that was brought up with ADUs, and whether or not people are using ADUs for long-term or short-term usage. All of that information is available on our public website. We have a link to it, but at our ADU webpage, we have an FAQ that has that public input summary. Respondents to the survey also had that over 67% think ADUs will improve housing affordability. More than 72% wanted to see ADUs considered in single-family zone properties. We also had a good support that felt that ADUs should be allowed in either large or traditional lots, and some wanted no restrictions on whether or not the size of the ADU was on certain properties. We also had 24 respondents that did not want the city to consider expanding ADUs allowed in basically single-family areas. So currently right now it's multifamily zone properties, and we're looking at areas addressed for single-family zone. Next slide. So 65% of the initial respondents in our first survey also was interested in seeing ADU size anywhere from 800 square feet to up to 1,000 square feet. So that seemed to be a consistent theme range. That's consistent with one of the state's proposal, as well as the city of Phoenix has adopted a code that allows up to 1,000 square feet of ADU space. 55% of our respondents also wanted no parking requirements, while the others, 20%, wanted to see at least one additional parking space. So there was some in between and weren't sure of whether or not parking was necessary or not. More than 55% of our respondents also wanted to see restrictions in the use of ADUs on short-term rentals. So not allowing usage as short-term rentals in the ADUs. So with our ongoing, go back to the next slide. With our ongoing staff research, next slide. We delved into some research of other cities and other municipalities and what they provide with their code provisions. And Lucas is going to provide a quick overview of that research and what we've provided so far.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm Lucas Jensen, Planner 1 with the city. I'm not sure I've spoken at one of these meetings yet, so it's good to see you all here. We conducted city interviews. Part of when we reached out to council at that work study session, we were directed to proceed with more outreach and research. As part of that, we met with various municipalities and conducted interviews with them. The city of Phoenix, Tucson, Raleigh, and Provo. Phoenix was, this is the decision on why these cities were selected to interview. Phoenix is a neighboring city who recently adopted an accessory dwelling unit code in September of 2023. Tucson, Raleigh, and Provo all share similar characteristics to Tempe in that they're small to medium-sized cities. Generally, the population's not more than 500,000. They recently adopted accessory dwelling unit codes, and they're all home to a major university, just like Tempe. The city of Phoenix allows accessory dwelling units in all single-family residential zoning districts within existing residents. Their maximum size, like Ryan said, is capped at 75% of the main residence, and on lots less than 10,000 square feet, it's limited to 1,000 square feet, and for larger lots over 10,000 square feet, it's capped at 3,000 square feet. It would be whichever is less in that scenario. There are no restrictions on short-term rentals in their code. There are no owner occupancy requirements and no additional parking required as part of their code. And the majority of public supported the accessory dwelling unit code amendments when those went through. The city of Tucson, similarly, they allow accessory dwelling units on all 1 and 2 unit residential lots. The ADU size is limited to 10% of the lot size with a maximum of 1,000 square feet. However, all lots are allowed an accessory dwelling unit of 650 square feet, subject to meeting lot coverage and other development standards that are applicable. The maximum height is 12 feet if the primary unit is a single story, or if an existing 2-story building on the site exists, a 2-story ADU is permitted up to the height of that existing building. They also do not restrict short-term rentals, no owner occupancy requirements included in their code. They do require 1 parking space for an accessory dwelling unit, but they offer waivers to remove that. Those waivers include being located in a transit-oriented district or in proximity to a bike boulevard. There's various waivers to remove that. And in Tucson as well, the majority of the public supported those ADU amendments. In Raleigh, North Carolina, they allow ADUs in residential and mixed-use districts. They did not include a minimum lot size for ADUs. Instead, they opted to limit that by stormwater retention and other development standards such as lot coverage. So if the ADU can meet those requirements, it would be permitted. They also do not restrict short-term rentals on ADUs, and there are no owner occupancy requirements or additional parking required. Provo, Utah was a little bit different. They passed a House Bill 82 that required at least 33% of residentially zoned acreage to allow ADUs. As a result, they decided to allow accessory dwelling units in all single-family residential districts. The ADU square footage and height cannot exceed that of the main dwelling unit. They do require 4 total parking spots. If the existing home had 2 parking spaces, they would be required to add 2 more parking spaces to accommodate a lot if they decided to build an ADU. They did require owner occupancy of the primary unit or ADU. And they also stipulated that there would be a maximum ADU occupancy of 3 unrelated adults. And they explicitly prohibited shipping containers as allowed for ADU construction. When we spoke with city staff at Provo, they did say that the strict requirements made permitting difficult, and that there's possibly several illegal ADUs that exist that don't meet these requirements. Another aspect that council asked us to look into, and we received a lot of public comment on affordability and cost of construction of ADUs. We also conducted some research on pre-approved ADU plans. Pre-approved ADU plan is an architectural plan that has already been reviewed and approved by the local government's building department. Typically, a design or architecture, a private firm would submit plans for consideration, and those would be reviewed and approved as they come in. Those pre-approved ADU plans would then be featured on the website for purchase directly from those private design firms. We found that the cost range is typically from $500 to $1,200 for those pre-approved plans. And at that point, it would be the property owner's decision whether or not to work with that design firm for the construction of the ADU, or whether they would just like the plans. Pre-approval is for building code only for the standalone unit. It still requires a site plan that shows it's meeting requirements for zoning, setbacks, lot coverage, etc. That city council memo for pre-approved ADU plans is also available on tempe.gov/ADU if you'd like to take a look at that. Another common comment from the public was just seeing an influx of accessory dwelling units when accessory dwelling unit code passes. So we went ahead and did a little bit of research on what is typically coming through when other cities have approved these code updates. The city of Tucson received 61 applications from January to December, so the calendar year of 2022. In Raleigh, North Carolina, they received 183 applications, with 86 of those completing construction since late 2020. So that's about a 3-year time frame there. In Boulder, Colorado, and Berkeley, California, they weren't originally listed on the selected cities page, but the others did not have reliable permitting information. So I chose some other comparable cities to Tempe for this one. In Boulder, Colorado, another college town, small to medium sized, had 200 applications and 96 completed from February to July of 2022. Again, about a 3-year time span. And in Berkeley, California, the year 2022, 112 were permitted with 72 completed. So the average annual number from these cities is around anywhere from 60 to 80 accessory dwelling unit applications per year. With that, I'll pass it back over to Ryan Levesque to discuss the preliminary draft of our accessory dwelling unit code.
Great. Thank you, Lucas. Now we'll get into our preliminary draft, and after we provide the overview of this, we're looking to hopefully get some input from you all on this draft. We're looking at a concept. So first slide. These are, go back to the comparison. So what we've looked at is comparing our current code requirements to proposed changes. So instead of just looking at multifamily, we're looking at both single family and multifamily zoning that would allow a single ADU unit. Currently, there are no restrictions on short-term rentals, but we would look at a restriction to restrict the ADU specifically for short-term rentals. The city can't restrict the primary residence from being a short-term rental, as a property owner has enjoyment right to do that today, but we can restrict it specifically for the use of ADUs. And we feel that's beneficial in a way that we're looking to preserve the affordability of ADUs for long-term rental usage rather than like an Airbnb. Currently, the code has no additional parking required for the ADU. We looked at sort of a hybrid approach of addressing parking requirements based on the number of bedrooms for the lot. So you could have an ADU that maybe it doesn't require additional parking because you have no more than 5 bedrooms total on the site, or it might require an additional parking based on the overall total bedrooms that exceed 6 or more bedrooms for the site. And we have a proposal too that gives someone an option of a waiver to remove the parking requirements through a public hearing process. Basically being able to, get your neighbors involved and find out if it's appropriate that they can eliminate that additional parking requirement through a public hearing process. We are proposing to look at increasing the maximum allowed ADU square footage from 800 to 1,000 square feet. Seems to be consistent with most other local code changes. We'll also make sure that you cannot have both an ADU and a guest quarters. Guest quarters are not available in multifamily zoning, so Than the proposed code. We are not proposing to change that requirement. You might have a guest quarters today that could be converted as an ADU, but you can't have both on the same lot. That might be considered having like 3 dwelling units on the property. Currently, the code has no owner occupancy requirement. We're also looking to maintain that, but we are looking at a proposal that would that the property be owned by the same owner for the past preceding 3 years. This is looking at addressing concerns that that it might be an investor-driven process that come in that wanted to buy multiple properties just to put in ADUs. This ensures that the property owner has been with the property for some time, and that would make them an eligible applicant to participate in applying for permits for an ADU while having the property for at least 3 years. The current code for guest quarters does allow other single-family properties to have lots of 8,000 square feet larger to have guest quarters. We are proposing to remove the guest quarter provisions and in place have the ADU provisions for single-family zoning, and then change guest quarters back to where it originally was in the AG zoning district, where you have a minimum 1 acre lot. The big difference with guest quarters and ADUs is guest quarters can't be rented where an ADU can. So if you have an existing guest quarters, you do have the opportunity to seek to convert that to an ADU through a proper permit. But the guest quarters provisions that allow the size of the guest quarters to be 50% of the main residence would reside in the AG zoning district category. Next slide. So as we stated about guest quarters, the proposal is to eliminate the regulations from the R1 zoning and only allow it as an ADU regulations. If you have the ADU, you can still use that space similar to a guest quarters, which is basically allowing guests of the main residence to stay in that space. Opportunities to convert guest quarters, it would still comply, but we have to comply with the standards. So if there's a limitation, say, for example, on the size of the ADU, if the guest quarters is larger than what we allow for ADUs today, then that would be an example where the conversion would not be allowed if it had to meet the size requirements for ADUs. So the current proposal would allow guest quarters only in AG zoning that typically have 1 acre lot sizes. We also are looking at so no changes basically in the development standards for maximum height setbacks, which are dictated by the zoning district of your property for front, side, and rear, and lot coverage requirements. So we're not proposing any alternative changes to the ADU code. What you can do today for your home in terms of building expanded bedroom area or an accessory structure on your property, those same setback rules apply for the ADU regulations. So we have a consistent playing field as to where you can build or develop on your property. We're not asking to build more than what's allowed today, but we're asking to build within those same parameters that are allowed in your zoning district today. Next slide. On-site parking, as we stated previously, so we look at the ADU unit and the primary residence and how many number of bedrooms in total there are. And if there are 5 or less bedrooms, then only 2 required spaces are required, which may not result in having any additional parking on the site. You do have the option as an owner to add more parking, but it's not required by code. But if the total number of bedrooms are 6 or more, then that 3rd parking space would be required. And as we mentioned, there is an option to remove that additional space through a use permit process through a public hearing. Next slide. Short-term rentals. So again, we are restricting ADUs from being used as short-term rentals, which is renting that space for less than 30 days. There is a process by which someone applies and has a license for short-term rental usage, and that opportunity is only available for your primary residence. So you can still have the primary residence used as a short-term rental or reside there on the property. So this is a quick glance map look at Tempe and potential ADU eligible lots. I think last time we showed this map, we had just shown all single family zone properties. And in this instance here, we're showing an exclusion of HOAs from this count because HOAs do have the ability to regulate and restrict the usage of ADUs on their properties based on what their covenant and restrictions have. So in looking at our calculation, there's a potential of 23,800 eligible properties throughout the city that might be eligible to seek an ADU permit. But that comes with meeting the criteria, with conforming to the lot requirements, and we recognize that not everybody is interested in producing or proposing an ADU unit on their property, but we just wanted to show you in context where properties may be eligible. Next slide. So the next steps, we're looking to get a survey from you all. You're going to probably have an opportunity to speak publicly with us right now, but we also want you to go online and take the survey. It's open right now and closes on May 1st. So we have more than a month time period to collect that data. We're hoping to get more respondents than we did last time. So let's make sure that you can share with your neighbors the survey and have everyone have opportunity to take it. Next steps. So we've done our early on preliminary outreach in August and October of 2023. We've expanded the research since December through February, and staff going out to reaching out to other cities and interviewing them on their research information. But the next timeline for our upcoming public meetings, where today we're going to be having a meeting at the Tempe Public Library this evening at 5:30. So you have an opportunity to go out there. We'll go over this same presentation, but in person. We also have 2 more in-person meetings on April 2nd in North Tempe at the North Tempe Multi-Gen Center, and then April 8th in South Tempe at Arizona 811. So again, also on ability to do the survey, conduct the survey online. We have an opportunity, if people are interested, to reach out to us personally, and we can have communication, maybe get invited to a neighborhood meeting. We're happy to participate in any way possible. We also have some commission and committees meetings that we're going to be attending: Neighborhood Advisory Committee, Development Review Commission meeting, Historic Preservation, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, Sustainability Resilience, and the Transportation Commission are just among a few of the commission outreaches we'll be meeting in the next couple months. Next slide. So finally, we're hoping to take the period of May to wrap up and compile all that feedback and the survey results and prepare a report to City Council at the targeted June 20th City Council study session. And that meeting will be a work study session, and we're looking to get consensus and direction from council on our findings and information. If they direct us to go forward and pursue an adoption of an actual draft ordinance, we'll start that process in early late summer in July or August with Development Review Commission, Neighbor Advisory Commission, and then council meetings in the early fall to wrap up that process. I just want to thank all those who are participating in this process. Here's the city staff contacts and information. And now we just look forward to kind of getting some feedback or questions from you all on this topic right now.
Thank you, Ryan. We will go ahead and open it up for Q&A. On the tempe.gov/ADU page, we also have some frequently asked questions and answers that we shared a link to before. And we'll continue to add on to that. If there's something on that list that you don't see that you'd like to ask, please let us know. So far, we already have a request to come in to speak, so I'll open it up to Ann Till. Maybe Ann's connecting right now, so let's go ahead and take a question from Vaughn Medisha. Vaughn asks, what about infrastructure, water, and sewage not designed for added 23811 units? Can ADUs be sold individually?
Well, good question. Yeah, and actually, we have another slide on frequently asked questions. We actually got feedback from our water utilities department, and they've affirmed that there are no concerns, no impacts on water and sewer infrastructure to accommodate ADUs. There are some cases maybe where the water lines might need to be upsized to accommodate that additional flow. But basically, the property owners have the opportunity to either provide a direct connection, a sub meter, or share the same line from the property. And obviously, it's going to be, there's no requirement for one versus the other. But if you're sub metering your power, say for example, to the property, then it gives you the ability to kind of evaluate which building or which residence is generating which amount of energy. If you don't have a sub meter or separate metering process, then you're just going to get that bill all in one with both the ADU and the residence. So maybe that's something you build in, that you said, hey, you're just going to give someone a flat fee of what the ADU rent is, because you're not having to be able to figure out how much utility breakdown there is between the two. So that does have a factor in. Typically, if you have an alley, usually the sewer is off the alley and your water main is off from the street. So that might factor in how you can either connect directly into the public main lines or through the main residence.
Thank you. Anne, are you available or want to speak? Okay, we will hop on to Clay Fennelson. Clay asks, what would be the purpose of attaching parking requirements?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. He asks, what is the purpose of attaching parking requirements?
Yeah, and the purpose might be just evaluate, okay, maybe that one size fits all, maybe not every site, can do without parking. There might be a need in certain areas where maybe there's not quick or convenient access to alternative transportation modes that might need a parking space available. And so we were just looking at a hybrid approach at addressing the total number of bedrooms based on the parking factor. This is very similar to what happens today if someone wants to do a room or bedroom addition to their house. And if they have 6 or more bedrooms in their house, it does trigger the additional parking requirement. We do have some communities that were built prior to today's code regulations that required to. Prior to 1967, I think you were only required 1 vehicle parking space. So that does have a factor in on whether or not you might need additional parking. There are alternatives to that. There is a process that allows you to identify your driveway as a designated parking space in the front yard setback. We've had many folks that have done like expansions of homes where they've converted their carport into livable space, and that triggered a requirement to allow the required parking in the front yard setback, basically your driveway. But there's a public hearing process that would allow that.
Thank you. David Sokolowski has had his hand raised up. So David?
Yeah, I have concerns about a lot of these regulations. I think Tempe should probably be doing more what the state of Arizona is looking at doing, and the closer that we match that, I think the better it's going to be. Like for example, you're not allowed to have an ADU and a guest quarters at the same time. That doesn't really make sense to me. I really like the idea of being able to provide an affordable unit. And I mean, I have other examples like with the short-term rentals, because I'm concerned that if we restrict the short-term rentals in ADUs, then it's possible that the single family home could actually become a short-term rental. Like if Tempe needs to have so many short-term rentals, let's just say 1,000, well, then I say let's go build 1,000 ADUs and let's try to preserve the home as much as possible. So I just think that we should really think carefully about all of these different regulations and try to make it as flexible as possible. If people are going to be using short-term rentals, then we have to deal with that reality and not think that by regulating the ADU that we're going to ban short-term rentals from the city, because that's not how it's really going to work.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your comments, and we'll definitely take that into consideration. And you're right. If the state does adopt the ADU program, then we will have to conform to the base provisions of what the state's legislation would be required. And so we'd have to make those changes related to parking or size requirements that are identified with the state legislation.
Okay, the next question is, thank you both. The next question is from Kirk Fergus. Will any new regulations respect existing CCNRs for the subdivision?
Yes, so CCNRs or HOAs that have governed CCNRs that have language that does restrict subordinate or additional dwelling units are can take precedence over local zoning allowances for ADUs. The city of Tempe doesn't specifically, we don't get into regulating CCNRs, the city, but the HOA themselves can be more restrictive and restrict a property from allowing an ADU. The same way CCNRs also have the ability to restrict short-term rentals.
Thank you. Question from Bernadette San Miguel related to the proposal that owners must own the property for 3 years prior to building an ADU. Will current residents be grandfathered to be able to build earlier than 3 years? I just moved to Tempe, and the rest of that comment went away, but that was, oh, would she need to wait 3 years?
Yeah, good question. So the intent is not to wait 3 years to start the process. If you have already owned or have been owning your property the past 3 years, that would count in your eligibility to apply for an ADU permit. But if you're a recent homeowner that you just bought the property, then that would be the time frame that you don't have to wait 3 years until have owned the property to be eligible to apply for the ADU permit, at least as proposed in concept.
Okay, I think I skipped a couple. This thing scrolls, so apologies. James Roche asks, can ADUs be permitted as a separate streamlined permit process than what exists now?
Yeah, the ADUs would be a new permit process. We process permits today for some existing properties. There are about 300 eligible sites today that can do ADU permits, and we processed, I think, about 8 or 9 of them. But if this passes, if the ordinance passes to allow expanding ADUs, then our goal, the next step would be to develop a program that would offer some expedited measures or incentives in kind of reducing some of the cost burden associated with applying for permits. And that could mean, based on our research and what we see from other cities, is having either pre-approved plans or plans that were allowed to get pre-approvals if they followed the same permit plans. They had already gotten permits for it. They're basically ready to issue. They would just have to pay the costs associated with those plans. But that would be kind of the second step in our process once we found out that ADUs would be able to expand in other areas of the city.
Thank you. Andrew Kuo asked, my question in the current code, I believe the lot size requirement is 8,000 plus. I didn't hear or see anything changing in the presentation, but based on the map shared, it seems like it is changing. Can you clarify if I'll be able to build an ADU on my property that is 7,000 square feet lot if this code goes in, how the lot size requirements would work?
Yeah. So the proposal is the ADU would not have any lot size requirements. They would just have to meet the lot setback and lot coverage requirements of that property. So no minimum lot size. This would replace guest quarters, as I said. And so in lieu of someone building a guest quarters that can't be rented, someone would be able to build an ADU that they decide whether they rent it or not. It's up to them. But we would just be regulating ADUs in single family zoned areas that don't have a minimum lot size requirement. You just have to meet the standards of the property. And just like with any other process, if there's ability to make, like I say, a 10% modification in the setback, there's a use permit process that allows someone to get some relief from those setbacks or heights based on the public hearing process. And that exists today with everyone's property.
Thank you. I missed the, next is from Kevin Glover. I missed the slide on converting guest quarters to an ADU. Can you provide a quick summary, or will the link to the presentation be available?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely intend to post this presentation online on our ADU webpage site. But yeah, it can be a fairly simple process to get a conversion from guest quarters to ADUs. If you receive the guest quarters in recent years from the city of Tempe, there's a requirement that the owner has to sign a real covenant restricting the property from being rented independently from the main residence. As a part of that ADU permit process, we would terminate that covenant restriction from the property, and then any changes that might be proposed to the ADU unit, like providing separate metering or basically creating an address for the ADU unit, would now be eligible for that property. The one major caveat is making sure that basically the property conforms to the size requirements of the ADU. So, if you've got a guest quarters that are larger than 1,000 square feet, for example, then that would not be an eligible guest quarters to convert to an ADU. It would have to meet the size requirements.
Okay, let me go to see if I can get back to Lisa's comments. Lisa Zurich, before the city approves the building of an ADU on a particular site, how will you check to see what the HOA allows for that particular development? How would the city make sure that an ADU doesn't get built where it shouldn't be?
Good question. So it is the responsibility of the property owner to be aware and knowledge of their required commitment to CCNRs. Every property owner that moves into an HOA has to sign an agreement, understand the rules and regulations for governing that area. And so typically their first step is trying to seek approval by an HOA. Sometimes, usually it's design review, and then they find out maybe that they can't build what they're proposing to do. The city does not review. We have no review or control over private covenants and agreements with HOAs, but we certainly will put that disclaimer on any of our applications that they need to be aware of that process ahead of time.
Thank you. We have a question. Let's see here. Sorry, I have an 8,000 square foot lot with an existing 1,000 square foot house, while my neighbor has the same lot, but an 1,800 square foot house. Why will I be limited to 1,000 square foot ADU totaling 1,800 square feet on my lot, while neighboring lots can have 2,800 square foot coverage? Both lots will be below maximum allowed lot coverage.
Okay. I think in both examples, regardless of the size of the lot, you'd both be limited to no more than 1,000 square foot accessory dwelling unit. That's not to say that you couldn't expand your main residence to be larger than that. Most homes are anywhere from maybe 1,200 to 2,500 square feet in size area. You can certainly look at expanding your main residence, but to be eligible for accessory dwelling unit, it has to be accessory. It's got to be subordinate to the main residence. We don't want accessory dwelling unit to be looking like it's the dominant house on the property, and that's where the size limitation comes into play of 1,000 square feet of habitable, livable space area there. If you're a design, say for example, on that lower right hand corner there that shows a garage space, we don't count garage. We don't count storage space that's separate from the living area. That's not habitable space. So we just count the area that's livable for the accessory dwelling unit. And any excess space like storage or garage would not count against that calculation.
Okay, thank you. Someone has a question about the slide. Sorry about that. One moment. You'll have a lot of good questions.
Yeah, they do.
Brenda, you want me to
Okay.
read that one? Or you got it?
Yeah, please. Actually, I see it now. I missed the slide on converting guest quarters to an ADU. Can you provide a quick summary, or will the link to the presentation be available?
I think we did that one.
Okay, yeah. Shauna, you go ahead. I think I'm.
That's okay. So the question was asking Ryan on the slide related to short-term rentals, if the owner could live in the ADU and rent out the primary residence, if he saw that correctly.
Yes, that's possible. Someone can decide to downsize, live in the accessory dwelling unit. Maybe they're now empty nesters, and they choose to rent out the primary residence as their rental income from the property. That is possible.
And I think you answered this already, but just confirm if the minimum lot size requirement, for example, 8,000 square feet for a single family house zoned R16 be removed or reduced.
Yeah, so the lot size limitation the is being removed. So there's no limitation on that. It's any size lot can propose an ADU. It just has to meet the setbacks and lot coverage requirements for the property and its zoning. If you've got a very small lot that might be zero lot line, then your property might not be eligible to be able to add an accessory dwelling unit in the property. Unless you're building vertical or unless you've got a basement in your property that might afford you to split up the existing residence itself.
Okay, next question is asking if you'll be opening up a period of time to apply for an ADU on site, or that would just be a permanent adjustment.
Yeah, this is proposing to be a permanent change to the ordinance through an adoption process. So that process does require more hearings with Development Review Commission and City Council, and then a cure period 30 days. So it's conceivable that the ordinance could be available before the end of the year, and someone could apply at that time as long as they meet the eligibility requirements.
Okay, and then does the city of Tempe require a certain contractor for sewer and water extensions to ADUs as well as electric?
No, we don't require any specific contracts, but they have to be provide qualified engineered drawings to show those connections for hookup.
Okay, and then a clarification on the previous CCNR question. There are some subdivisions in Tempe that when built had CCNRs but never incorporated into an HOA. So they are asking if the CCNRs are placed on the property by the builder and still in effect, would those still be relevant? So I guess based probably on your last question, we just need to make sure it doesn't just say HOAs, but they should check CCNRs.
Right, check your CCNRs, right. So if your CCNRs have language that would limit the ability for someone to add another dwelling or accessory dwelling, what we're describing here, then those CCNRs could apply. Again, it's the responsibility of the property owner to ensure that they're following and governing those regulations. We've had scenarios before where someone was not compliant with their CCNRs, and it turns into a private litigation matter. So please make sure that you're checking the necessary documents that you're governed by and controlled by.
And then are there density requirements on how many ADUs per property based on current multifamily zoning?
The proposal density is for only one accessory dwelling unit per lot. So that would apply to multifamily as well. If your multifamily zoning allows you more than one unit, then instead of doing the ADUs, you'd be just adding the unit based on your density allowance for a multifamily zoning. So maybe your property actually allows 3 because of your multifamily zoning, then maybe ADUs is not the proper process from you. How we did ADUs with multifamily in the past was it gave the opportunity to retain the single family status of the property. So that meant the city was not doing any control of design review of the property. They didn't have to have lighting standards or landscaping standards. It was just still treated as a single family property with an accessory unit.
Okay, and then asking if there'll be a design review aesthetic requirement. And then you had mentioned pre-approved, so asking if the city would consider pre-approved standard plans to simplify the process.
We are hoping to present pre-approved plans, and that would be the second phase of the process step if we adopt an ordinance. We are not looking at requiring any design review, but again, if your HOA does allow ADUs, then there would be a design review process within that HOA that might have a design review control. But the city has no purview or regulations on single family design review. We only look at multiple buildings or townhome complexes that process multiple building requests that require design review, like multifamily. But for single family, their design review is exempt. And similar to that, the state law is also looking at proposing to restrict cities from requiring certain, design review aspects like similar pitch roofs or design materials. So there are restrictions being proposed from the state as well on that matter.
Okay, then it looks like Anne, you're able to unmute now if you want to ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're working.
Cool. Okay, so I've got a couple points that I'd like them to just clarify in the slides. You don't need to answer now, and then I've got a couple comments. So on the pre-approved type of plans, could you list how much you really save when you have those? And then two, on the where you're comparing other cities and how investors went in, I think it's kind of apples and oranges, so it might help to list whether they required owner occupancy and what percentage of homes are owned by investors in Tempe versus those cities. Three, guest quarters.
Hey, Anne, maybe we could have Ryan answer one at a time so he can,
No, I don't
just
want,
because they're not written.
I don't
you
even
don't?
want
Okay.
them to answer right now. I just want them to update the website to kind of clarify those, because I don't think he probably knows the answer offhand anyways.
You're correct.
But on guest quarters, it's very confusing. So I wondered if you could clarify what happens to somebody who has an existing guest quarters in your future slides, not now. Let's see, 4, I think you could clarify whether there's more than one ADU per property, but you already answered that. 5, sewer, water, etc. analysis, can the property handle it in its current location? How is the city going to handle that? Maybe clarify that on the page. And then I had 2 comments. One is on shipping containers. I listened to an NPR article about how they're very energy inefficient. So it's something to study. And then on the own 3+ years, and I'd like to see that they owned it 3+ years and it was classified as a primary residence, mainly because a lot of investors own properties and they're over renting them to too many individuals. And so it's causing parking problems on some of our streets. So even adding the parking, I really would like to see them classified as primary residents for 3 years, not just own 3 years. And so that's it. Nothing that you really have to answer right now. I just wanted to maybe get some slide or info update on the website, and I know you have several other meetings, so maybe some of that will be useful.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Anna. I hope we can provide some of those updates for you on the city's webpage. I do want to respond to the existing guest quarters question is since we'd be removing the ability to have guest quarters in the future, existing guest quarters would be allowed to remain as legal non-conforming. And so again, if someone has a guest quarters today, they're restricted from being separately rented. So they're just used by guests from the main residence, and that's how they can be used as of today. If someone wants to use those guest quarters for something more or for a rental, then they'd have to come in to seek permits for that type of change.
Okay, Ryan, then the next question, referring to ADUs being able to be rented for a minimum of 31 days, saying it's not going to solve the problem of a lack of housing for the local population. It will allow these ADUs to be used for temporary housing for winter visitors. To protect against short-term rentals, why not make the required rental period be at least 6 months to a year?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we have the ability to restrict the time period of the rental, but it's the classification they get put in of typical rental is at least a 30-day period. If you're less than that, you're either a hotel or an Airbnb, basically having rentals of less than 30 days.
Next question, is this restricting the ability of building a guest quarters at the size of 50% of the main residence to 1,000 square feet?
Yeah, so you wouldn't be allowed to propose a guest quarters now. It would be an ADU unit that could be used as a guest quarters. So we'd be removing that 50% requirement altogether. So now it's just based on the ADU unit size allowance of 1,000 square feet. Or in the case of if the state adopts their version, it'll be a maximum of 1,000 square feet or 75% of the main building's area. So if you have existing 1,000 square foot home, you could then only be allowed a maximum 750 square foot ADU unit as an example.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a few more we're going to get through, and then we're going to come up against the end of our time. So once we get to the end, Ryan can share again the meetings. If you didn't get your question answered or have more, you can always join us as those as well. Are there restrictions on container buildings?
So we were exploring alternative construction types. There might be some limitations on container buildings unless they met the requirements of the residential code. So you have to have a permanent foundation, you have to have water sewer hookup. Most likely, I think what we were looking at for alternative construction types, we were allowing basically tiny homes or prefab manufactured homes that would also be placed on a permanent foundation as an alternative allowance to what we typically not be allowed in single family zoning. So containers might be one of those categories, but they have to comply with the building code for residential standards.
Okay, and is there an incentive with the city to rent to those with housing vouchers?
Not specifically an incentive, but there is the ability to rent with housing vouchers. Yes.
Is
That is a
regulating
possibility.
is regulating short-term ADU compliant with state preemption on regulating short-term rentals?
Can you repeat that again?
So the question is, so the state has preempted us regulating certain things around short-term rentals. So just asking if the ADU, not allowing it to be a short-term rental, is that compliant with state law?
Yes, this has been researched, and actually there was some prior legislation draft that was looking at ADUs as well. And you know, the state wants to ensure that we're exempting someone from making sure that we allow long-term rental usage, but they're being silent on whether or not we restrict short-term rentals. So yes, we're still complying with the state. It's been evaluated because your property is allowed to have a primary residence, and that specific primary residence or the lot itself could be the short-term rental. So if someone to say we're renting out the whole property, then the ADU might come with it. You just can't rent it independently from the main residence.
Okay, and then I know you mentioned ship.
Sorry, Sean,
Oh, that's
and
okay.
that can be regulated and controlled by our licensing process. So anytime someone's making an application, they have to be registered and licensed with the city as an eligible short-term rental. And we can verify whether or not, you know, if this is the primary residence or an ADU on restricting from ADUs being short-term rentals.
So I know you addressed containers, but they're also asking about restricting manufactured homes or tiny homes constructed offsite and delivered to the site. Would those be approved for ADUs?
We are looking at the potential proposal that would allow some alternative construction types like tiny homes and prefab manufactured homes, but as long as they're placed on a permanent foundation. So trailers or vehicles or anything that's still left on a trailer with wheels or axle would not be permitted. It has to be on a permanent foundation. So ensuring that the property is a permanent residence.
Okay, not a question, but a comment, just referring to state reform being important. So there's an equal standard statewide versus Tempe shouldn't be one of the only cities adopting reforms. And then, so last question we can fit in today, can current multifamily zone properties apply for a rezoning to have more than one ADU?
You know, the process of rezoning is eligible for anyone today. We don't typically see a single family property being requested to rezone to allow more density on individual lot, but there's a rezoning process for that and is available to anyone who pays those fees and goes through that process, but not specifically as it relates to accessory dwelling units. No, there's no provision that would allow more units other than a zoning designation that might have a higher density allowance.
And then just a follow-up, Ryan, so we can finish out. Why does the city require only on permanent foundation to your answer regarding the homes? And Lucas, if you want to go to the next step slide while he's doing that.
Well, yeah, that's just to ensure we're compliant with life safety building code requirements. You know, we do deal with complaints and nuisances from time to time of complaints of people receiving that they're living or residing in an RV or a mobile home and on the property, but it's not permanent. And so today we're having to address some of those issues that are real issues that are complaints. So we want to make sure these properties are proposed, they're permanent, they're there to stay. And you can do that with converting a tiny home to be on a permanent foundation. This would require us to come up with a tiny home building code version that would make it eligible to have those properties that are, say, smaller in size from a traditional residential code. I think the allowance would be down to like 250 square feet in area for like a tiny home product.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Lori, yeah, I'm going to put my direct number and you can call me. And I'll be at my desk as soon as we get off this, if you're available, and we can walk you through the survey. And if anyone else has any other problems accessing it, let us know. You can go up at the website there, tempe.gov/ADU, and all of our contact information you can find there as well. So again, you are welcome to come to any of our in-person meetings. Brenda also reminded us that we will record this meeting, put it up on the website, so then you can refer neighbors, property owners back to that website so that they can also see your great questions you asked. And then we will also, as those come through, update our FAQs and everything else that's online. Tonight, if you are going to join us at the library, just so you know, we do have an event in the north parking lot. So put in the chat there, but your best bet is to enter off of Rural Road and allow a little extra time to get there. And then again, the online survey is open through May 1st. Ryan, did you want to share anything else to close us out?
No, thank you. And thank you for everyone's involvement. And we appreciate your comments and raw thoughts. And please take that survey. We're looking to get further feedback on this.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.